Good evening, everybody. We don't usually shoot at night, but this is step one of a recipe that I'm going to be completing tomorrow. But this step is actually really good for vegans, vegetarians. We're going to make Duxelle of mushrooms, which is a fancy thing created back in the 17th century by a French chef. And it's basically finely chopped mushrooms with shallots, garlic, and I'm gonna add parsley, thyme, things like that. Now, we're gonna cook them down. Anyway, it's beautiful. It becomes this beautiful stuffing that you can either add to soups, sauces, gravies. You could put it in puff pastry and make tarts with it. It's really useful, and it is vegan. So let's start. What we're going to do is we have our cuisine out with the regular blade in it, and this is 4 pounds. It's a mixture of white button and cremini mushrooms, because tomorrow I'm going to do a vegetarian take on moussaka, which is an eggplant layered dish. But for now, we're going to just put in our mushrooms, 4 pounds. These have been cleaned, dried. I don't believe that mushrooms, absorb water. So usually when I clean them, I fill a big bowl with clean water like this, and then I'll dump in one batch of my mushrooms, get all the dirt off them, and then I just pat them dry, and they're ready to go. I trim the ends, and the ends I even kept, and I made some mushroom tea, so you can use that for soups and sauces, things like that. So anyway, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna have to do this in batches, and I have a bowl over here lined with a cheesecloth towel, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna process all of these, put them in there, and squeeze out the moisture. So I'm gonna start, and I'll see you back. It took a little while. Usually you'll only use about ½ a pound of mushrooms, but I have a little over 4 pounds because tomorrow I'm going to be replacing meat in a recipe, and it calls for 2 pounds of meat, so I'm using 4+ pounds of mushrooms. Now you can see they come out just a very, very fine chop. So it's not really you don't want a paste, but they're pretty finely minced and chopped. So we're gonna start with that. Now what we have to do is take some of the water out, because part of doing this is we're gonna put those in a pan to saute with some oil and butter. But in order for them to actually brown up and crispen, there's a lot of water in these. So you want to get them in a towel and then squeeze over the sink, over a bowl, whatever you're doing. So squeeze, and that color's coming from the creminis. And it's like you squeeze out spinach. I do that for when I make spinach pie, spanakopita. That's delicious. There's just things, squash, like when we did our zucchini chips, we were pressing moisture out of those so that they would brown in the oven. So anyway, just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Get as much water out as you can. And then what you end up with is a nice semi-dry bunch of mushrooms. Kind of looks like ground meat, right? So I'm going to use those in my recipe tomorrow. Ugh, that needs to go to the wash. All right, dry hands. We're gonna take this over to the stove. We've got it semi-dry. I did it in 2 batches actually, because that's how much I had. So, and I'm using a large 8-quart stock pot because I wanted to have surface room to dry. So I'm gonna put, let's put some butter. But first, once you heat the pan over medium heat, and then once the pan gets hot, add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of butter. We're probably gonna need more than that, but we'll start off that, and we're gonna add at least half of these mushrooms in. We'll see how much we can get in. They're gonna shrink down really fast, but as a matter of fact, let's take a break right now. I'll get these in, and we'll be back. All right, we're gonna do this in batches. I've got half of them on the stove, and I'm turning them just with the butter and olive oil. It's gonna take a while to get all the moisture out of those, and then I'm gonna have to do the second batch. But for purposes of education, we'll just, ooh, we got a light bulb doing a dance. For purposes of education, we'll just do half so we can show you. So in the meantime, what I will be adding, again, and we wanna grind it nicely, is I'm gonna put a handful, which is about a cup of parsley, fresh parsley. I have 4 shallots that I'll cut in half. All right, definitely doing that in 2 batches. Now, of course, if you're doing a smaller amount, like a half a pound of mushrooms, it'll be a little bit easier, but I'm preparing over 4 pounds of mushrooms. So right now I have 2 pounds in with some butter and olive oil over medium heat. Preheat the pan, put in your oil, then put in your butter, melt that, put the mushrooms in, and just stir, give them a little bit. In here I've got a handful of parsley, 4 cloves of garlic, 4 shallots, and I had some white onion, like a third of a white onion that was just kind of left over. So I want to get all this chopped up as well, because what's going to happen is once we get all the mushrooms dried the way we like, we're going to add this. I have 3 sprigs of thyme that I have you just go backwards on the stem, strip them clean, running a knife through them just a little bit. And I'm going to hold that, I'm going to hold the thyme and add it directly into the pot later. But for now I need to get these going. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to do a chop on them. See, it's just a nice fine mix of onion. Can you see that? Fine mix of onion, shallot, garlic, parsley. We'll add thyme later. That's for once I get a lot of the moisture out of all the mushrooms, we'll add this in, get the moisture out of this, and then I'm gonna take it one step further. So we'll see you in a bit. Hey guys. Chef Colleen here. I just wanted to show you, we're going with the Duxelle of mushrooms, and you can see that this bottom of the pan is starting to get dry. I've added in the vegetables, and that's kind of how we want it, because you can see when we start this puppy out, this is the mushrooms at first. You can see how much bubbling liquid, that's just releasing lots and lots and lots of water. So I cook them about halfway to where I'm getting some of the water out of it, and then I'll add in the vegetables because they're going to have water all their own. And then cook it down from there. This has the vegetables added, and once we get the liquid down, we'll add liquid in. What? All right, I'm not going to lie, that took about half an hour, maybe a little more. I divided the mushrooms up because I'm doing so many into 2 pans, and when you're all said and done, you want to have a dry pan when you, because you want it to be dry, because we're going to add stuff back in. So I'm going to combine these 2 batches now, just so you guys can see. So that's the mushrooms. We've added in the shallots, the onions, the garlic, the parsley. Now what we're going to do, I didn't season with salt before because I didn't want to concentrate all that salt. And I have, give it a taste. As you always want to taste as you're going along. Tastes like mushrooms. So now we're going to do a good pinch of salt, several cracks of black pepper. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of wine. This is a red wine, just a couple of ounces. So we've taken all that moisture out of the mushrooms so that they can take in this moisture and absorb these flavors. A 6-ounce can of tomato paste. This is going to go back on the stove for a good 10 minutes because what we're going to do is toast the tomato paste. Now the tomato paste is not included in Duxelles. What I put in this pan, you would add a little bit of fresh nutmeg too, and then you're done. I'm flavoring this for tomorrow. Stop making so much noise. Oh, that's better. I'm flavoring this for tomorrow to make my vegetarian moussaka. So I've got my tomato paste in there, fresh nutmeg, and I would say a good half teaspoon, if not more. I love nutmeg. It's gonna give that flavor that you go, what is that? That's so delicious. I also have cinnamon, and I'm gonna do about a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Remember, because we can add in, but we can't take away. I'm gonna mix this up, and guess where it's going? Back on the stove for a good 10 minutes because I want to toast off that tomato paste. We'll have it soak in the wine. Maybe another little splash. That couldn't hurt anything, right? And see how all right, well, we had a little bit of a glitch with our camera, but that's okay. What you may or may not have seen, let's go through it real quick. We have our minced mushrooms, cremini and white button mushrooms. And then we put those on the stove and started removing the water over medium heat. Then we added in some minced vegetables, shallots, onions, garlic, parsley. I chopped some thyme, that went in there too, and cooked that until we got a dry pan. Now, it comes out looking pretty nice and dark. This is a beautiful Duxelle mushroom. Now, once we got everything dry, I added back in tomato paste, red wine, then we started our seasoning with salt and pepper. And what you may or may not have seen is I added in about a half teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And you could probably go even a little more on the cinnamon, but again, I'm going to be using this tomorrow, so I can always add some tomorrow, and it's easier to, add less than try to take it out. So we have our Duxelle, and now what I want to do is, just for the sake of, oh, that's not going to work. Let me get a big spoon. Just for the sake of getting it nice and cool, we're going to put it on a pan and spread it out. And that'll help it cool faster. You want to get food out of the temperature danger zone as quickly as possible. You sit over here. And then I'm just going to wrap this up. Once I get it down to room temperature, I'm going to wrap it up, put it in the refrigerator overnight. Again, this can be used as an additive for gravies, sauces. You can bake these in pastry and make little tarts out of them. You can flavor them any way you want because the mushroom's going to pretty much take on the flavor of what you put in it. So Duxelle mushroom, this is just part 1. And yeah, it's a little fussy and it takes a little time, but that's where the love comes in. If you love cooking, if you love what you're doing, then it's worth it. And I think it's worth it. So that's it. Chef Colleen, check us out on YouTube. I'm Chef Colleen at Chef Colleen on Twitter. I think Fish Ribs to Go on Instagram. You'll see it. Check us out. See you later.